Welcome to Q&A practice. Let's start out with a little warm-up. It's to finish off the Q&A that we were working on previously. We just have a couple of pages left, so we'll start it off with a little warm-up and then we'll get into a different transcript. So let's start with the plaintiff attorney. Ready? Here we go. But you can't tell us if you did that on this day, though, can you? Asked and answered, Your Honor. Well, can you answer that, sir? It's the way I turn to go home. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Any other cross? No questions. Redirect? No, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, sir. You may step down. Rebuttal? None, Your Honor. Okay, counsel approach. Motions. On behalf of the defendant, Your Honor, I would again move for judgment and I would adopt the argument that I made at the close of the plaintiff's case. Response. I'd make the same response, Your Honor. Are you gonna have a motion, Mr. Stevenson? I'm gonna let this go to the jury, Your Honor. Well, as I said before, I'm glad I'm not the trier of fact, 'cause this really is gonna hang on credibility in my opinion. And I think, Mr. Ford, you're close, but you can't do it, can't pull the switch because of the inferences. So I think the verdict sheet should be done, and what I do is I give them several written instructions which are duplicates. Oral ones like what negligence is, preponderance, and probably contributory will be the ones we have here. Any objection to that procedure? No, Your Honor. No. Motion is denied. I have one request. What? If we could have a brief recess before we close. We're going to get a recess. Yes, thank you. All right, so that will finish up that Q&A material, and we will start some new practice material. And we will start with defense attorney. Ready? Here we go. Good afternoon, Mr. Fassbender. Good afternoon. Let me go back to the beginning of your testimony about some of your experience for a few minutes, okay? Yes. 27 years as a law enforcement officer is a long time. Would you agree? Yes. Not that you are old yet, but it's a lot of experience. And I'm not sure that we got clear. Was all of that with DCI? 5 years of that was with the State Patrol. Okay, but always for the state, pretty much, correct. And you did say that one of the functions of DCI is to help out other law enforcement departments all over the state, particularly smaller ones that may not have as many detectives, right? Certainly. And you know, coming from outside of an area, you kind of have a different perspective, perhaps, than the local people who have been, you know, in individual local departments. Yes, possibly. I mean, you are somewhat at a disadvantage when you talked about knowing local vendors and resources if you need tow trucks and that sort of thing, right? Yes, so it's helpful to have those local departments available for that kind of assistance, certainly. Yes, sir. Okay, but in smaller departments, sometimes, you know, you realize that there's probably some history between certain suspects and certain police departments. Certainly that could be. Okay, you have the advantage of, though, coming on the scene without that kind of problem. You don't have any prior history with anybody who may be a suspect or person of interest, right? Yes, I like to think so. And in this case, when you were called in, you live in the Fox Cities area. Yes, okay, so you watch the television stations from Green Bay, and that's where you get most of your media news. Yes, sir. And Appleton News, of course. So you knew this Teresa Hall case, missing person case, had already gotten quite a bit of publicity, right? I had seen bits and pieces, yes. Okay, and when you were called into this case, you knew that this was going to be pretty high profile. Would that be fair? Just based on Teresa missing, or where I was being sent? Where you were being sent. The possibility, yes, existed. Okay, so you knew that your performance as an officer, you didn't at that point know you would be a lead investigator, did you? No, but you knew that obviously your performance could be under the microscope, so to speak, of a high-profile case. My performance is always under a microscope, but more people may see it, yes. Okay, sure. So you wanted to make sure that it was a thorough investigation that you undertook, right? Yes. As complete an investigation as you could, yes. And as you described it, this funnel approach, you wanted to be as thorough and get all leads and everything carefully investigated before you narrowed down to the bottom of that funnel, that one man, right? Generally, yes. Okay, now you also knew, well, maybe you didn't. Did you know before you got assigned to the case and you went over to the Avery property, were you aware of Mr. Avery, who he was? Yes. You knew about the wrongful conviction and all the years in prison and all of that, right? Yes. And you knew he had filed a lawsuit against Mann County after that, right? I believe so. Well, was there talk in the law enforcement community in this whole area, you know, northeastern Wisconsin, about this lawsuit at all? No, not from my experience. Okay, so what you knew was not insider knowledge. It was just from the news. Essentially, I know DCI looked at something related to that. In fact, the Attorney General commissioned a report by your department. Yeah, the Attorney General. Okay, and she looked and focused on the wrongful conviction of Mr. Avery to try and see what, if anything, went wrong that could be determined. Although I wasn't involved in that, I believe so. Okay, and you knew then that after all that was done and all the information was gathered and additional facts were learned, Mr. Avery filed a lawsuit against Mann County. Yes, I believe so. And against Mann County Sheriff or former sheriff. I'm not sure about that. I know it was Mann County. I believe Mann Sheriff too. Yes. Okay, all right. And then you arrive with that background and that knowledge, and you come to the scene, and the first thing you do is you go to the command post, which is right at the entranceway to the Avery property, right? Yes, sir. And you go through a debriefing or a briefing, I should say, with those in command, right? Yes. You mentioned Sheriff Pagel, Deputy Inspector Shetter, perhaps. Was he one of the ones you spoke with? Perhaps. I can't recall. Was Investigator Weigert there? I don't think he was. I think he was obtaining a search warrant. Okay, Lieutenant Herman, maybe? I don't know. All right, but some upper brass, so to speak, in the Mann County Sheriff's Department, as well as the head of the Calumet. I definitely remember speaking with Sheriff Pagel, and I know I saw Deputy Inspector Shetter there. All right, we will stop there. That will conclude our Q&A practice.